everyone, so today I've got something a little bit different for you. Instead of a cake topper tutorial, I'm going to show you how I carved and decorated this fab cake for Father's Day. So the day before I decorated the cake, I made the lolly stick from modelling paste, which I coloured using PME's Old Gold. I love this food colouring. It can go from like a light ivory shade to a dark caramel, depending on how much you put in it. So I used a toothpick, as you can see here, and I just put a little tiny piece of the food colouring paste and I just work it into the modelling paste, as you can see. So I thought it would be a good idea to maybe not work all the paste through, so you have a little bit of grain effect like you would on a lollipop stick. Okay, so here I'm really happy with the shade that I've got, and you can see here that I've used a bit of greaseproof paper and I've just drawn out and cut out my lollipop stick shape. So I'm rolling out the paste to the length of my lollipop stick, and I've done it to about 1/2 centimetre thickness. So now I'm going to place the template on top, and I'm just going to use a big knife just to cut out the shape. I find that using a big knife means you can do it all in one go and you don't end up pulling the paste and distorting the shape. And now I'm just going to use a smaller knife just to trim around the curved edges and then just smooth it off with my fingers. So the sides got a little bit misshapen, so I'm just using a knife and a cake smoother to straighten it off again. So I'm going to show you 2 ways of making this lollipop stick. One would be this way, and once you're happy with the shape, you just let it dry overnight. And then when you insert it into the cake, you would need a little bit of sugar paste support so it doesn't flop down. Or you could do it another way, where before it dries out, you could insert some cocktail sticks like this, and then you let it dry out overnight and insert it into the cake without any extra support. So we also made the letters the day before from red sugar paste, also known as fondant. Here I'm cutting out the F, and I'm just using my fingers to make sure there's no rough edges, and then I'm just going to use a brush just to help it pop out of the cutter. I made them the day before just so they can set a little bit hard and they're less likely to distort when I stick them onto the cake board. So here I go with the A. Now these cutters are actually quite old. I don't know if you could still get them, but there's lots of other cutters out there that I'm sure you could find. So now I'm going to carry on to make all the letters to say Fab Dad, and then I'm going to leave them overnight to dry. Okay, so now it's the next day and I've got my 10-inch square cake. I've just put my template on top, which I've again made out of greaseproof paper. Now a 10-inch cake may seem excessive, but I like to freeze the offcuts and use them to make cake pops and things. So I made this cake the day before and let it cool down and settle overnight. I find this makes carving a lot easier. So I'm just carving a rough shape here before I cut the cake in half and fill it with buttercream. Okay, so here I've cut my cake in half and I filled it with buttercream. I've also cut a thin cake board into the shape of the cake, and I'm just using a little bit of buttercream to stick the sponge onto the board, and then I'm just going to stack it here and smooth off any of the buttercream that may have come out from the sides. So now I can go along and start shaping my cake. I take small pieces off at a time because you can't always put back, but you can always just take a little bit more off if you need to. So first of all, I'm going around all the edges and I'm just making it kind of beveled at the side, the same way as a fab lolly would be. As you can see, I'm doing it ever so slight at a time, less is more. just to get the shape first, and then later on you can go through and you can make it a little bit more defined. So this is the bottom where the lollipop stick will go, so that's going to be a lot more curved. And I'm just taking a little bit out from the bottom as well, because obviously that would be kind of beveled as well. So now I'm happy with the shape, and I'm just going to go around and take a little bit more off each side. You kind of have to do this because it may look right, but then when you put the sugar paste on top, you kind of lose some of the definition. So I find that once you've got that initial shape, you can go around and just make it a little bit more defined, and that really helps with the covering. So now I'm just going to take a little bit more off the bottom where the cake meets the cake board. And a good tip here is to use a pastry brush to brush away any of the loose cake crumbs. So now I'm happy with my shape. I'm going to put a very thin layer of buttercream all over. This helps to sealing all the crumbs, but I also find that once I've covered it with a very thin layer, I can see if there are any extra pieces that need to be carved off. I don't know why, but I find that it helps me see the overall shape. So I'm just going to cover it in a very thin layer of buttercream, and then I just pop it into the fridge for about 15 minutes. So here it is out of the fridge, and now I can see the little extra bits that I want to take off. So once I'm happy with my lolly shape, I'm just going to go over it again with another thin layer of buttercream, just to seal in all those loose cake crumbs. Once you've sealed them in, it really helps because it prevents all the cake crumbs getting onto your sugar paste when you cover it. So once I've applied the second layer of buttercream, I then pop the cake back into the fridge and chill it until the buttercream is firm to touch. Okay, so the buttercream's nice and chilled, and what I'm doing here is I'm just marking where I want the white sugar paste to go. I want it to go about 2/3 over the cake, just like it would look like on a fab lolly. So I'm just marking that with a knife, and now I'm just using the ruler to work out roughly the size that I need the white sugar paste to be. So here I've rolled out my white sugar paste to about 5mm thick, and I've just used a pizza cutter to make a nice straight edge along one side. So I've used my rolling pin just to carry the sugar paste over the cake, and then you can see that I put the straight line along the line that I've made, and you slowly just go around just moulding the sugar paste to the cake. You don't want to pull down, you need to kind of almost pull up towards the top of the cake, if not it will stretch and could break. And then I'm just using my pizza cutter to remove any excess. And here I'm using the cake smoother just to go around and just, because the cake kind of curves under the bottom, I'm just using the side of the cake smoother just to bring that icing in at the bottom there. And now I'm just going to go over and smooth the cake. And now I'm just going to go and trim bottom of the icing there towards the board. And again, just use the smoother to smooth off any rough edges. It's best to do this a little at a time, just so you don't remove too much and then expose the cake underneath. So that's the white sugar paste all neatly onto the cake, and I'm going to do exactly the same with the red sugar paste. So here I'm just adding a little bit of clear alcohol to the edge of the white sugar paste to help the red and the white stick together when they meet. I'm just using the cake smoother to help bring the red and white sugar paste together at the join. So now I'm preparing the cake for the brown sugar paste by adding a bit of piping gel to help it stick to the white sugar paste. And I'm just using a ruler just to gauge the size that I need that to be. And then I'm just adding the brown sugar paste in exactly the same way as I did the white and red. Here I'm just using the blade end of a blade and shell tool just to straighten off the edges. So now I've placed the cake onto a cake board that I have covered in white sugar paste. I covered it the day before and let it dry out. And now I'm using the lollipop stick just to gauge where I need it to go. It's kind of in the middle and halfway up. I'm just making a little indent mark so I can see where it's going to go. And I'm using a knife just to cut away the sugar paste. And then I'm just going to scoop out the excess sugar paste. So I'm doing this so I've got somewhere where I can insert the lollipop stick later. Okay, so if you're not using the toothpick method, then I have put a little bit of white sugar paste. I've stuck it down with piping gel again. I'm just making sure it's the right height for the lollipop stick, and this will just act as a little bit of support. I'm doing it now just so it gives it a little bit time to harden. Okay, so now it's time to make the sprinkles. So I made the sprinkles with modelling paste, and I made different colours similar to that of what you would find on a feast. I coloured the paste with concentrated food colours, and I will leave information on that in the description. So firstly I roll out my modelling paste, and I find it really easier to use a cake smoother because you get a nice even roll. And then just because I wanted my sprinkles to be a similar size, I used a ruler just to gauge the size there. I did 2 centimeters and 1.5. You don't have to do this, you can make them as rough as you like. And I'm just going to go along and just chop them up there. And then I'm just going to use my fingers just to round off the edges like a sprinkle would be. Okay, and you can see here all the different colour sprinkles that I made. And now the fun part, I just used some piping gel to stick the sprinkles all onto the cake. Note here, if you are using piping gel, you really don't want to use too much, because if you get it onto the cake then you will see it, so you need to make sure it's hidden underneath the sprinkles. I'm using piping gel here as it's a quicker sticking method for the video. And there we go, that's all the sprinkles on. Okay, so now we're going to add the lollipop stick. So again, I'm just using a little bit of piping gel here to help it stick into the cake. And I'm just going to push it into the cake using the hole that we made earlier, and the bit of white sugar paste underneath to help support it. And now I'm just going to add another bit of white sugar paste underneath the other end. So this gives you the 3D effect, but without using any other support such as the cocktail sticks. Okay, so now I'm just going to add the Fab Dad that I made yesterday. Just going to put them onto the cake to gauge where I want them to go, and then I'm just going to stick them down. Again, I use the piping gel here, but you can use clear alcohol, which is what I normally use because that evaporates without leaving any marks, or you could also use a clear edible glue. So now I'm going to show you how to do the cocktail stick method. Here I'm just adding a little bit of clear piping gel again before I put it into the cake. Obviously these need to be removed before you eat, and if this is a gift you need to let them know that the cocktail sticks are in there. Okay, so just going to insert it into the cake a little bit further than what I did before, as it needs a little bit more support. Okay, so that's your cake made. I really hope you liked this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you'd like more tutorials like this. Please like and subscribe for more and hit that notification bell.